Last time I left you with an error, and turns out it was just a capitalization problem with an ID. Remember, I went through and changed all the IDs to lowercase in the database, and there was still one hiding in one of the forms, and that's what was preventing my form. What? I'm sorry, that's not the right version.
Although you know where the error is now.
I know where the error is, but this is still, I don't know if it's a wrong version or what I just dropped up there because I'd updated all the CSS. I thought I did. Of course, I had 3 copies going. I probably put the wrong one up there. One of the things I don't like on this page is all these fields have different font sizes than the labels or different fonts. And I'm sure, I hope you're not running into that. I'm guessing you're not running into that in the systems class because you're using Bootstrap. But here it's causing me a little grief, and it turned out the solution was fairly straightforward. In this piece of CSS here that styles all of the inputs, text areas, buttons, and selects, I added a font colon inherit. Basically says take the font from the container, which in this case is the form, and then the body, and so I believe that will make the change that I want.
I have the font
You do? Okay, well that did, but this is the only one I can't get to work. For the life of me, I cannot get the select command to work, and it's on the list. I've even gone into the select tag itself, so now you're all going to be trying to get it done. That's good. I even went into the select tag itself and said the font is Times New Roman, and it won't. It refuses to change. Everybody else is okay. I also discovered while I was playing around with this that notice these are all the same size, so I wanted to make the hire date and the salary the same size. Chrome refuses, automatically resizes those to fit the data that's in them. You can see there's just enough room for the nav bar here, just enough room for the cancel and move up and drop down and all that kind of stuff. And so those are stuck. This one I have not been able to get work. What we were working on is if we change something here, so if I add another letter to Arnold's name here and I hit the employee list, last time it wouldn't warn me. I had written code, and I showed you the code in the button cancel, which is really what this is called. In the button cancel click event to validate, to make sure you really want to leave if the form is dirty. Let's see if it works today. Yep. So it must be the CSS somehow didn't get copied over. But you said yours is there, so that's weird. Okay. So the local host said that, so that solves that problem. So now if you try to leave, and you've got changes on the form, it senses it on the button. Remember, it always sensed it if we try to change pages. But this is a submit button, and the way the Are You Sure code is written is it ignores the submit buttons because it figures you're saving or you're deleting or something, and you don't want to ask. But for this one, I do. If it was a clear button, a reset button, it ignores those too, I think. So when you reset the form, it doesn't ask if you want to save your changes first because you just hit reset. So I put that piece of code in there, and there was just an ID missing. So in the JavaScript in form or window onload, it wasn't even getting that far because it was an error. So one capital D was causing all that problem. What I haven't done yet is, well, notice that button now works okay. I don't know why this one didn't. Now this isn't a form that has a form style attached to it. Interesting that that changed though, because my CSS, maybe I put it in the wrong place. Oh, wait a minute, that's the wrong CSS. It's the Red Cross. I'm not running Red Cross. What the heck?
Take out that inherit.
Let's just take the rest of the day off. Unit 6 done. There we go. Okay, now show me this CSS. What's bizarre is I changed the CSS in the Red Cross file and it changed it over here. That doesn't make sense. Must have been the right CSS file. employee CSS, no, form CSS, and it does have the font inherit in there. I wonder if that's the one that was changing or not. I don't know. Okay, but these are all form styles, so if I want this little mini form, remember that search box is a mini form to behave basically the same way to pick up the fonts, then really all I have to do is set a style for this, so or a class for that form. So let's go do that real quick so we don't get sidetracked here. And we'll go to the views for the list. And here's this mini form. So all I have to do in here is say class equals form style. Now they line up. The other thing I added to the CSS, I discovered once I changed the fonts, I did add one more piece to the form CSS, and that was a top margin somewhere. Where did I do that? Here, a little top padding, 5 points at the top of the labels because they were shifted up a little bit. Right? So I just added 5 points to the labels to shift them back down, and as you can see, everybody seems to line up halfway decent now. I also replaced all the GIF files with PNG files, so all our icons are ready to go. I think that's about all I did. So just a quick review, what we did last time is built in this search feature, so if I'm looking for cruise and search, it'll narrow my list down. And if I click on one of these, I can come over here and do all the stuff that I was doing. If I say, okay, I've seen what I need to see, take me back. No questions asked. But we did use a session variable so that when we came back to this form, it remembered my search criteria. So we set up a session variable. Let's take a quick look at that. I believe it was in the cases, or was it? I forget where it was. Must have been in the cases. Employee cases. We said if the session variable is, if the request variable is set, use it. Otherwise, if the session variable is set, use it. Otherwise, don't use anything. Use an empty string for the search variable. And so then this search variable got used in the view. I'll get to you in just a second. I'm going to pull the bottom of my form up. We'll get some stuff cut off here. Okay. In the view for employee list, here's my search box. It has a value of the session variable. So the session variable has to be set using this technique, but that's my technique is to, in that case, is set it either to the empty string or to the request array or whatever it was before. And then this uses it. Justin?
Is that something you found your users asking you for?
The search box?
Or to, when you go back to save the search? Because when you go back, you've seen what you need to see.
Maybe, but think of it this way. I'm looking for a certain cruise and I don't remember his name and there's 10 of them here. Was it Roger? Was it, maybe I'm looking at the phone number. It's real easy. One of the things I haven't done, though, I think Bootstrap has the ability to throw an X on the end of here to wipe it out, right? So for me, one of the users who asked for this is me, all right? And it's easy to just wipe these out and go back.
Is there
So-
any way to make it so that when you click in there, it automatically highlights what's ever in there?
Double click.
I'm sure there is.
Focus.
Yeah, in your focus command, you just select, there's probably some kind of select statement, but one of the things I discovered in my writing code for KeyPress to deal with stuff that's in selected text, oh man. Selecting it may not be too bad, but if you want to see what's inside the selected text and manipulate it, that's a bit of a challenge.
If you double click in a box, it'll select everything.
Unless it's got a space and it gives you the word. So if I'm searching for Volker Gall and double click,
And then triple click that.
user training, good luck with that.
Well, I guess I was more or less wondering to have a universal search bar.
Universal,
Search bar, how important it was from your user's perspective to leave that in there.
from my perspective, I found it convenient. And as an instructor, I found it cool, plus a reason to talk about session variables. Okay, So our goal now today is to add the ability to insert a new employee. And all these techniques I'm showing you, once you've seen how to do it on one form, you saw what we had during the presentation a couple of days ago, they all start looking the same, and they do. A lot of my websites look the same because it works. It's easy. So the next thing I want to do is add a new button, and where you put it is always sometimes a challenge. Sometimes I'll hang it out here, sometimes underneath, over here. Doesn't really matter. To keep things simple, I'm going to tuck it underneath. So before my list shows up, I'm going to create another form that has a new button in it. I'm supposed to be kind of following along here and make sure I'm on the right track. Add the new button. Yep. So in my view, first place I'm going is here. I'm going to add another form. And all this form is going to have in it is a button and a hidden variable. So it's a form. I'll make it class equals form style just so that it has the same font for the text. Method is still post. Action is still the empty string, which basically goes back to the controller. Inside there, I'm sorry.
On your action.
Thank you. Okay, inside here, I think I'll start with the hidden variable this time, so I'm going to steal it from here, copy it, paste it, hidden variable action, and where do I want to go for this? I actually want to say employee new. I always start my actions, remember, with the table name. And then in the cases, there should be an employee new, and we'll check that in a minute. So if you click this submit button, it sends a different action. Still closes this whole page, submits the form, which closes the page, but with a different action. Inside there, I just want a button, so I'm going to steal this one. It's a submit button. It's I think I have a new PNG. Where's my images? New PNG. No alt tag. And the text on the button will be new. There's an extra space in front that will appear. Kind of separates the new from the icon. That's all it does. Save that. I'm just going to refresh my page real quick to make sure it looks okay. And we could probably add the word employee on there, make it a little bigger. Or you can say add employee, I don't care. Now when I click that button, it should take me to the cases. First thing I want to do before I do that is check my cases to make sure that I have a case for employee new. I might not have one. And so let's go to the models. Here's the employee cases. And I have employee details. I have employee update. I have employee list. I do not have an employee new. Employee new is very similar to employee details. In the past, I've actually copied some, or not copied, but tried to merge them. It just gets a little too ugly. So employee new is my new case. Inside here, I'm going back to the exact same form. At least in my philosophy here. You guys have done something different. I understand why, and that's cool. But I try to recycle my forms here if I can, so that the new form and the edit form, same form. Though for Sheila's benefit, what the class discovered in the systems class is it's pretty easy to just insert code that says here's the form and put it in two different views. And so maybe they'll, if you hang out, I think next Wednesday, right? Next Wednesday, Lions are coming for a show and tell. So if you want to come, you're welcome to come and see what genius stuff they've done. But they're looking at importing and building these new forms versus edit forms on the fly, and they're a little bit different because of some of the subforms that they have built in. Here I'm going to keep them the same forms, which means I have to set the errors array. Still not going to be any errors. And really all I'm copying is what's up here. Going to the same form, so I need a plants list so that I can fill my combo box. And then I need to set the details because that form expects details. But this is a new piece of data, so they get nothing. That's the big difference. It's the only difference. And that's why merging them maybe isn't a bad idea, but then you're looking at an if statement to figure out which action is it, and if the action is this, set the details to the empty string, otherwise set it to something else.
I still got get employee details, and I just send in null, and when you use field value and then set it to the empty string, then it comes up blank.
So I can send null instead of details, you're saying?
No, for details, I get employee details, and then instead of request FID, I use null.
Why would you go to the database to get nothing?
I don't know.
Because get employee details, and that's the other thing that's different, right? But get employee details actually goes to the database.
Oh yeah, then there's no reason.
And we're creating a new record. User said it's new, it's not in the database. So no, I wouldn't do that. And a break. Save that. And refreshing this shouldn't make much difference because when I click on new employee, it does have the right action. So it should get the action, go back to the server, and give me a blank form. Everything's ready to roll. The only thing I don't see here, this piece was supposed to add a missing. Didn't we have that in that form? I thought I did. All right, so this took me there. Right now I'm a little concerned because my combo box has got Coloma selected. And I don't think that's what I have. I think I have inserting a missing option so that it comes up blank to start with. I thought that's what I had. So let's take a quick look at the, maybe I need to, that should be all right. So I'm going to go to the view for the details. Gender, plant. If the action equals new, where'd that come from? Input hidden, action. Which action is it asking about down there? If the variable called action.
There is no variable.
That's what I was going to say.
The plant ID.
If the plant ID is missing, then I would say that could go into here. This is probably left over from before. When I was extracting all of my variables, notice now I don't just extract them from the details. Could also say if the details array is empty, then add this. Let's just do that.
Couldn't you just instead add it every time?
Add what?
Do that outside of your for each loop where it adds the options and just
I could, but it's not this is a required field, so I only want it on a new one. After that it's required, and I don't want you wiping it out because that would get you an error anyways.
Okay.
So that's why I do it this way. If it's a new record, it starts off blank. Can't leave it that way because the form level validation will stop you. But after that, when you come back in again, you have a plant. If you're transferring plants, you still have to pick a new plant for that employee. You can't leave it blank.
You still have to write the validation though. There's no difference in the code. There's no difference in the actual code because you still have to write the validation. validation.
True, but why give them the choice?
Why not?
Because I can. That's why. I understand what you're saying. So you want to say this option goes outside of the for loop, but the for loop actually create. Wait a minute.
It
Well, this is the
outside.
label. Here's the for loop. So I just take the if statement out of what you're saying
Right.
and just add it all the time, and then the other ones will select it anyway. So that should be okay. Yeah, you could do that. It's a simple if. My form's smarter than yours. That's all. And now it's blank. There's a blank line at the top that's sort of selected. I can select any other, and then later on, after I come back with this one, it will stick. Right now, I can still go pick it because it's a new record, right? All right, so all the rest of this stuff looks like it's pretty good. Most of the validation should be good. That's not our purpose here. If the validation is funky, we should have done that in Unit 5. But at this point, I want to go to the employee list. I do have some changes that are made. Are you sure you really want to go? And I love how these things are different in different browsers. And now I'm back. So my new employee seems to be working. So let me just check my list here, check off the stuff that I've done. We did that. We added a case, test assure, yep. Add code to the details, get the plant, show the detail form, test, yep. Cancel, did that already. Employee details, note all buttons or submit. Each has a different name. So now we're ready to start looking at save.
Every one of your buttons on your employee form is submit.
Yes, they're all, the type is submit.
Right.
Their name is different. That's what's the key here. So now what we're going to take a look at in the cases is getting ready to save data. Here's employee update. We'll do that first. And then we'll just basically link in here employee save new or something like that. I forget what I call it. Do it as we do. But as it turns out, save new has the same effect. We've already coded button cancel. If the request is a save button, then save it after validating. And this validation is something I got to take a look at. We'll take a look at. Shouldn't be much there to validate, right? Because if we've done all this right, our HTML5 should be doing most of our work. This form doesn't have the constants in it and all that yet that we developed in Unit 5. But we shouldn't need to do much in that form besides our duplicate record check. Okay. So this we've already written. The delete, we're going to recognize that it's button delete. I think we already have that. The save, we recognize that the save has been authorized. What my notes say is let's just take a quick look at the request array here. So I'm going to do a print array of request. Shouldn't be any errors with any luck because the JavaScript should prevent it anyways. So I'm going to save that. Back to my form. Don't need to refresh this page. Just go to Tammy's page and change her last name to bar3, just because that's what I typed. Now when I hit save, there's the bar3. Here's all the other stuff. JavaScript has validated it. That's a hidden field. Phone number is in there, hire date's in there, salary's in there. And this is the key part. When you submit a button, or when you click a button that is a submit button, as long as that button has a name, not an ID, a name, the name is also submitted as part of the request array so you can check and see if it's there, and that's what we did. So in here, back to my notes. Did we check delete? I think we did. Let's do a quick check. Delete. Okay. Recognize the delete button. So now my buttons are recognized. Oops. And the next thing in my notes said, let's deal with button delete. Okay, so we recognize the delete. So instead of echoing the authorized delete, let's call a method. And I'm going to check real quick what my method names are like. So I'm going into the model for employees and get employee list validated. I should be able to say delete employee, right? So let's write it, and then we'll link to it. What the heck is that HP? Oh, that's a PHP. Okay. This method deletes the selected employee, and this is the part we haven't talked about, that employee strips. Whoa. Well, if we're going to have referential integrity and the user has authorized that, yes, I want to delete, then we should go ahead and do it. Maybe it was a mistake. I entered somebody twice and misspelled their name. It might not have, probably won't have any trips, but just in case, we're going to clean all that up. So I'm going to write a function called delete employee. And when we delete an employee, we want to send in that employee's ID. Inside here, we're going to do most of the same database stuff. We're going to change our query. And there's a binding, so that's good. We can steal that. We won't be fetching anything, though. That's what's different when you delete. So we'll see that. But I'm going to steal all of this and modify it for my employee. What's really nice about what I'm stealing is I'm stealing with an ID parameter already in here, so I don't have to worry about that. So I don't want to select, I want to delete from TBL employees where the employee ID equals. Prepare the query, bind it, execute it. But what we don't want to do is fetch a record because there is no record. What we need instead, or what we can do instead if we wish, is get the row count. How many records were deleted? And if we wanted to, our controller could check that, see if the row count is 1, because that's what we would expect, at least for the employees. Or we can just ignore it. I mean, one option is to ignore it, but I'm going to pop into my notes here real quick. Search box, paired statements, parameter queries, duplicate search, non-secure, other access method, data access, ensure data changes, connecting in, catching paired statements. Somewhere these notes tell me how to gather the data. It's the section I want to find. There's no link to it. Prepare. Parameter queries. Retrieving data. Why is there no link to that? Okay, so when we retrieve, we get a bunch of records, which we did with the list, get a single record, which we did with employee details, or a single value that occasionally comes back from statistical functions like count or max if you want to display that someplace. And what's often returned by, or what is returned by insert, update, and delete is the row count. So I'm going to scroll down here and find the row count one. Single record, single value. That's not it either. Here's the row count. So even after, really? After I close the statement, I can still get the recount or the row count. That's what it says. Capital C. And that would delete my employee, but it doesn't delete. the number of trips, or the trips for those employees. And so for that, I could put it in here, or what's probably best,
Make a function and call it.
make a function in the model for for trips, and then call that from here. Right. So the first thing I'm going to do, even before, I want to, what's going on here? This is a fetch command. I didn't delete very well, did I?
You missed it. Undo.
Underneath here, I'm going to make a variable, just a temporary one called, that's not going to work. What I wanted to do is send out a tuple, not good, of how many employees did I delete and how many trips did I delete. But I can't do that. Let's just test this first. Could create a few, let's be brave. Into the model, here's my trips functions. Got functions for validating and getting. What I also need now is a function for deleting, and actually, you know what, I'm going to go into my example for employees and copy that because it ought to be pretty darn close. This method deletes the trips for the designated employee. So this ID that's coming in is an employee ID, so maybe I'll make that a little more obvious for anybody who's reading this method. And I'm going to delete employee trips. Delete from TBL trips, where the emp ID equals the emp ID, and then this one needs to be changed to match. Get that, put it in there. This should delete multiple. No, we don't have to put on safe updates. That's a MySQL thing, MySQL Workbench thing. It's not the database thing. This will execute them all, and again, we'll return the row count.
Change the wording,
Pardon me?
change the wording and delete employee trips. The very end.
Thank you. Okay, so that should delete the trips. So now in the other file, you need to call it. Now the question is, will I have access to it? What do you think? I think the way this program is set up, well, no, we need to look at the employee cases. Here's the employee cases, and it does not bring in trips. So no, I don't have access to trips. So if I want to be able to use that, at least in the delete case here, wherever that went, here, I would have to include the trips. I think I could actually include it in here. But including it in here includes it for everybody. Including it in there includes it for everybody. I'm just going to put them all in the same places. If I'm messing with employees, I'm sometimes messing with trips too, so I'm going to require my models file for trips so that I can use the delete. So now my employees file, which is called from down here, should have access to it. And I think what I'm going to do is create a variable here called deleted trips. That'll capture the row count from there, and that's what I'm going to return from this one. I'm going to assume the employee was deleted. That's a brash assumption, but I normally do that in my program. I don't display anything saying I deleted one employee.
I always think that's nice though.
To be told, you'll see here though, when I delete a record, where do I go after I delete them? Back to the list and they're not there anymore. So I've got that feedback. Unless they're way down miles, and this is another reason, Justin, why the filtering comes in handy. Because if I have filtered and deleted a cruise, when I come back, the filter will still be cruise and I'll see one. Versus 3,000 records, I might be hard to see that the one I deleted is gone. But yes, you could easily throw in a JavaScript alert, or you could throw in a, there's no such thing as a PHP alert. But we can put a message on the footer, message on the header, do something, or send a signal to JavaScript saying, and that's the challenge, back to Harold's question, is I'm done deleting, but that's on the server side. Now I could just throw up a page that says I deleted your record, click OK, and then you click the OK button and it goes back and gets the next list. Nah.
Except when you're deleting an employee, you gave it a specific ID, which should be a unique key anyway. If it deletes more than one,
It can't.
there was a problem.
That's right, it can't. And it can't fail on the delete because how did they delete it? They picked them. They were looking at their details before they clicked delete. So they were looking at them. That employee has to exist. The only reason it wouldn't exist is if somebody else deleted them while I was looking at them. And if that's the case, it worked.
Refresh it, it'll be gone.
It's still gone. So you'll go, geez, Volker, your program crashed, did weird things, but when I went, it was gone. Well, I might remember that that was caused by a conflict. So it's not really a problem. It's just something you stumbled on. All right. So we've got a couple of methods that delete employees, that delete the trips. I'm hoping you're getting the idea that this database access stuff, for the most part, to write your query, build your parameters, execute. Now, in the next phase, insert and update, the parameter list is significant, but it's still the same stuff. These are all the same. All what you have to come up with is the queries, and yes, you can do joins, and yes, you can do case statements if you know how to do that in your SQL, and if statements and calculated fields, and you name it, you can put them in there if that's what you need.
It's gonna get interesting with all the linking tables.
No, it's going to get interesting with the camper record.
It'll get interesting. All right. So now the next thing I have to do is go to my employee cases. And here's my delete case. So instead of authorizing or echoing that, I'm now going to call that method, which is delete employee with the request capital ID. What if there isn't one? There has to be one. There's no way for me to get here without there being one. The only place I can delete from is a form, and the form has the hidden variable. If it's not there, it's because we screwed up, didn't put it in the form. I think what I do, I think one of the things I've done in the past, I hide the delete button later. I was going to say the other thing I've done, and this is in C#, is if the user clicks the cancel button instead, or if the user clicks the delete button and they're entering a new record, I pretend like they canceled. But here, if it's new or save, hopefully the delete button will go away. After this, I'm simply going to display the number of trips deleted. For test purposes, to make sure this is working. Okay, fingers crossed. The downside of what we're doing now is we're trashing data. Unlike Visual Studio, where you have a temporary database, well, we really have a temporary database, don't we? Can always go back to my employee SQL import file, import it, start over. It's not that hard. So I'm not too worried about that. Come back here. Here's my employees. Let's refresh that page just in case there's something goofy going on. And then I don't like Roger's name. So I'm going to delete him. Are you sure you want to delete this record? That's coming from my JavaScript. Okay. Employees should normally be archived, which we don't have the ability to do, not deleted. All trip records for this will also be deleted. Do it. Probably should have gone and run a quick query to see if there really were 6 trips for him, but didn't crash. Didn't get any PHP errors. And this is a good way to test this, by the way, is check to see if you get any errors here. Because if there had been PHP, SQL, whatever errors in my processing, they would show up here. Particularly the SQL errors. What often happens is you go a step ahead, which is what's next. Okay, what do I really want to see here? I want to go back to the list and see that Roger's gone. I can just hit the back button and then say employee list, and Roger's gone. But typically when I hit delete, deletes the record, automatically goes back to the list. It's got no place else to go. Now when I say the list, depends on what list you came from. If it's a list of Guardians, you go back to Guardians. If it was a list of campers, you go back to campers. So I want to go back. How do I go back? After I delete, I want to basically execute my list command, and we've done that before. Here it is. We execute a header. This is what the header is for. It allows you to, after you're done with this case, basically refresh the page again with a different case, a different action.
Is header a function?
It is a function that's built into PHP, yes.
And location, that's actually.
Location is just part of the syntax.
Okay.
Okay, what it does with this, I have no clue. Okay, but this says, give me the employee list. After you're done deleting, take me back. Pretend like the action's employee list and basically refresh this page without going back to the client and then coming back to the server. It's staying here on the server and refreshing. Now it's not going to tell me how many I deleted, but let's get rid of Arnold here. Delete. Sure. He's gone.
Could you show me the delete employee function?
Mm-hmm. So this is a little different than the way I did it last year. It just occurred to me, and Reen said, yeah, that's a good idea. Call this function. In the past, I've just duplicated this, put the query in here to delete the trips. Right inside here. Yeah, if we're going to do the model thing, let the trips deal with the trips.
Yeah, it's one thing for a join, but for
Right.
data manipulation.
Yeah, sometimes when you join, it's difficult to tell which table to put it in. Who does this join of employees and trips and plants belong to? You could argue either employees or trips, probably. That's why am I listing trips? Because I want to see each employee's trips, but I want to see each employee. Well, you're really looking at trips. I would put it in trips, but it doesn't matter. Just trying to keep things somewhat organized. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll take a look at save, make changes, and actually put them in the database.